Today on the Justin Nava Show, I'm talking about what to do when you've got an idea, you've got a project, and your pastor says, I don't know about that. What do you do? Do you push forward anyways? Do you argue with your pastor? Do you say, well, you're dumb and I'm going to go to a different church? Don't do any of that. We're going to talk about exactly what you should do today on Justin Nava Show, Episode 7, How to Convince Your Pastor When You Want to Try Something New. What's going on, guys? My name is Justin Nava, and if you don't know who I am one half of ChurchTrainingAcademy.com, a place where we teach churches and church leaders how to use and exploit technology to spread your message, to spread the good news, to spread the gospel. My name is Justin Nava, and on the Justin Nava Show, we talk a lot about the principles and the mindset that you need to have to implement the tactics that we teach you in Church Training Academy to find success with your ministry and really just max it out as best as you can. So like I said, today we're going to talk about what to do when you've got a plan or a project and the leadership isn't exactly sold on it. But first, I want to tell you about a little service called Podbean. Podbean is what we like to use at Church Training Academy, what we like to recommend that you use because there's a lot of podcasting providers out there. And if you're not careful, you can either spend too much money or spend an okay amount of money and not get good enough service. Podbean is kind of the overall perfect umbrella for your ministry to get going with podcasting. They have very affordable plans, and they even have a plan where you can go as much as you want. And when you pay annually, I think it comes down to $9 a month. It's very affordable. And you can podcast as much as you want. You got a sermon a week. 1 week you want to do 2 sermons. You don't have to worry about, is this going to go over our limit? Are we going to have to pay for overages? I've dealt with that before and it's not great. So getpodbean.com. If you need a podcasting provider, we love Podbean. Getpodbean.com. That's our affiliate link. We get a little referral bonus at no extra cost to you. We do recommend it. We're actually going to be moving our stuff over there in the near future. We're very pleased with it. Getpodbean.com. I'm put a link in the comments as well. And I apologize if you're watching the video here because I came into my my streaming platform, Ecamm, my streaming software, and I lost somehow all of my... Oh, I did get podbean.com. I lost all of my graphics. I have lower thirds, and I have some images, but I lost them all. So I don't know what I did, if I updated something. So if you're watching the video, it's going to be a little bit, it might be a little bit more bland than it is, but I'm going to try to use my hands a lot because I know Dave likes me to do that. But let me get to the content here. If you have a question while you're watching the stream, please leave a question in chat because I do want this to be more engaging. And I want to make sure that I answer questions that come up because I guarantee you, if you have a question, someone else listening, either live or later listening to the rebroadcast, is going to have the same question. For example, Valentine watching on YouTube says, the funny part is that I'm exactly in this situation and I was thinking about how to deal with a no after all the work I put into a project. We're going to talk about that. So before we can get into exactly how to convince your pastor, I want to make sure that we cover the proper mindset that you should have, because what can happen is if you find a great service, a great platform, a great ministry that you want to do or start, if you're not in the right mindset and the pastor tells you no, you're going to throw a temper tantrum. You're going to be triggered, as Dave hates to say, and that's going to ruin a lot of what you're trying to do. It's going to ruin a lot of your credibility, and it's going to ruin a lot of the reputation that what you're trying to do is, right? I talk to people all the time, and I tell them, how come you're not running Facebook ads? Just not that Facebook ads are a cure-all, be-all, end-all solution, but just as a curiosity question. I don't see that you've ever run Facebook ads, or that you're running them right now. And they say, oh, well, we had someone try to do it and it didn't really work, or they didn't tell us how to do it, or they said it was going to do this, but it didn't. And the reputation is ruined. And so if you were to go to your pastor and say, hey, I want to try these, and he says, we've done them before, it didn't really work out that well, it's because someone went in there with the wrong mindset, and it kind of ruined the reputation of what they were trying to do. So you got to have, I'm going to tell you 2 things here that you need to make sure that you have correct within yourself. Because if you don't, there is no point in trying to convince your pastor to do something because you're coming at it from the wrong angle. You're just approaching it wrong. Okay. So let me get into it here. If you hear me pause, it's because I'm reading comments, and I want to make sure that I choose my words very carefully for especially this show. So lots of questions come into the Church Media Hacks group and a lot of church communications group, especially last week. There was quite a few in the other church communication and media groups about what do we do when someone has an idea, but the pastor's not convinced. For example, I saw a question go up in another group that said, how do I convince my pastor to use social media? A noble question with a noble intent. However, we need to make sure that the mindset is 100% correct. So first, I want you to understand this. I want you to get this mindset in your head. And this is going to be a little bit of tough love, guys. Okay? I want you to first understand that you and me, you are not entitled to anything. I want you to understand that. When we're in ministry, we have things we want to get done, and we have expertise in things and strengths that God gives us and talents and spiritual gifts and all that. But you alone are not entitled to anything. Me, myself, when people pay me for anything, website, services, consulting, coaching, odd jobs, they're entitled to get something for their work, but they're not entitled to get exactly what they want. And I'm not entitled to get what I want. Let me summarize this way. It is God's grace that it is by God's grace that we can accomplish what we do. So do not dare think that just because you know something, you are entitled to call a shot and make it happen. Okay? When I came to my current church, it was 2 years before I could get a new website up for us. We were running a terrible website and no one wanted to switch. It took me 2 years to get there. Why? Because I wanted to make sure that, this was something that our church needs. I wanted to make sure it was something our church could carry on without me. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And I wanted to make sure that, I'm not going in there guns a-blazing, half-cocked, saying, I can do websites. Let me do a website. It's going to be so great for you guys. No, I'm not entitled to that. Okay. And that's my job. You are not entitled just because you know something is good. You are not entitled to get it to happen. You have to come to it from under the leadership. Okay. Don't try to overtake them and be smarter than them. You're going to fail every time. Second, you need to understand that your pastor has other things on their plate that you will never know about. I'm not even saying that you'll never understand. I'm saying things that you'll never know about. There were times when I was working on church staff that I found out of things that happened 3-4 years ago that I had no idea could even happen in a church. Not even our church, in a church. Unbelievable things, but the pastor has to know that. The pastor has to deal with that. Heck, there's some people I talk to, some pastors and leaderships that I talk to that they're going through legal stuff in the church because someone's got to sue someone because they didn't like something, and the church will never find out about it because the pastor has to handle it first with, legal expertise and the parties involved and all that. So a lot of times they're wrapped up in this other stuff that is important and comes with part of being in a leadership role and a pastoral role, especially when you're talking about, being the shepherd of the flock and some of the flock go missing. There are things that they're dealing with that you will never understand. So when they say no, it's often because they know something that you don't. And this is, again, where you have to understand that you're not entitled to something. And you're not entitled to pretty much anything. Sometimes you have to swallow a pill and you have to say, not at this time. Not at this church. Okay? Your thing might be great and it might have worked for other churches, but at this moment, it is not time to implement it just yet. So you need to understand those two things first. You have to have that mindset. Number one, you're not entitled to anything. The pastor tells you no, you cannot throw a fit because you know better. Okay, you have to come from underneath. Number two, you have to understand that your pastor or leadership, whoever's telling you no or is not convinced, you have to understand that it might be because there are things that you don't know. Okay? Perfect example. At a church I served at, we had a stage display with a dark purple robe that was supposed to signify Jesus or something. This was years ago. Came in one Sunday, beautiful stage, but now the robe was gone. And so it was like a, what do you call it? Like, not the robe, but the sash that hangs on the cross. And, one day the sash was gone. It was like a bare cross, which is fine. Still looked okay, but it was like, man, where did that kind of made the scene, we liked it. And, someone, you hear someone didn't like it and they took it. Well, it turns out in a certain culture that was represented at our church, the dark purple almost looked black, and the black had a certain negative relevance as far as spirituality, And this was a discussion that was had, and it was the pastor's decision that, we want to make sure that this culture is respected here. And if it made them uncomfortable for a good reason, then they didn't want to have that as a stumbling block in their time at our church. And so they removed that dark purple sash that almost looked black, and because, we didn't have all the lights on. Now, do I agree with that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I do. I'm not sure I would have made the same decision in that leadership moment. But that's what the pastor did. I didn't find out about that until months later, like after we had already torn down the stage. So, I can understand where he came from. At the time, I didn't know. I thought it was stupid. I thought someone was just throwing a fit because we put something nice on the stage. And, some people you used to fight that battle. No, there should be nothing on this stage but nice ferns and a Christmas tree and the American flag, right? So we put something that wasn't that, and someone got mad. That's how I took it. But I found out that the pastor knew something and had conversations and actually fought battles for me without me knowing. So just understand that. Now let me get to actually what should you do? Okay, so let's say that none of this applies, right? Sometimes you're going to want to start projects, and yes, you understand that. Okay, just because I know this should work doesn't mean that I'm entitled to make it work. Doesn't mean that I'm entitled to make it happen. Again, I'm a web guy. I know websites, and I especially know church websites. I have no entitlement to walk into my church and say, let me do your website now that I'm here. Okay? I did not go in there with that. It was a long thing to make sure that I was the right fit for my church. Second, you have to understand that your leadership may know things that you don't, and that may be driving the no. And again, you are not entitled to know because you are not in that leadership position. So you can only convince your pastor of something once you fully grasp and understand these two concepts. So let's move on. For a majority of people, though, this might be it. This might be as far as you go because you need to understand this. And I'll be honest, if you just came here for a script, I probably should have started this off, and I'm sorry for wasting your time. If you just came here for a script of, hey, Joe, just say this. Just say these words to your pastor. That is not what the Justin Nava show is about. Now, we try to put out templates and scripts and documents and guides and checklists and all that stuff as part of Church Media, guys. The Justin Nava show, which is part of the Church Training Academy, we're talking about the principles that you need to have to implement. Okay, we're going to be talking a little bit more high-level stuff. This is because you need to understand these concepts and have these ideas before you can actually implement these tactics. Because if you go in there half-cocked, again, you're just shooting yourself in the foot, and whatever you're trying to do, you're giving it a bad rap. So let's talk about how to convince someone once you understand this mindset. And if you have not understood this, listen. You can keep listening, but don't implement it until you have that mindset. And by all means, send me a message if you have any questions about that. No comments in the chat yet. So everyone's taking diligent notes. I love it. More people are watching on YouTube than Facebook too. That's great. Okay, so number one, if you want to convince your pastor to do something new, number one, you have to be completely in tune with what the pastor's vision is for the church and make sure that your idea aligns with the vision or solves a problem that's getting in the way of accomplishing that vision. That's a mouthful. Let's break it down. Number one, number 1A, you have to make sure that your idea, social media, a new website, live streaming, you have to make sure that it's in tune with the pastor's vision for the church. A great example of this is a really, really hard pill to swallow. There's a local church that their mission is to impact their city. That's it. The church wants to be a local church. It wants to use all of their resources, 100% of their time and resources and budget to impacting the 20 miles around the church. Maybe with some more resources that can get bigger, but they really wanted to focus on their neighborhood. One day a woman came up, a very well-meaning woman, with a noble thing and said, hey, I really like Operation Christmas Child. That's the Franklin Graham Project, Great Samaritan organization. They do an Operation Christmas Child where the church provides toys and packs them in a shoebox, and then they ship them internationally to children across the world in third world countries, war-torn countries, impoverished countries, to give them a Christmas gift where they otherwise would not have one. And of course, they get the love and message of the gospel. However, that means spending time organizing, promoting, packing, delivering to the drop box of these toys. Money, budget, right? Because parents are going to have, or I say parents, but people are going to have to buy these toys, spend time, learning the rules of what toys you should get, what not you should get them there. Resources of collecting shoe boxes and all that stuff. There's a lot in there. And of course, you do want to have a little bit of budget. If you do Operation Christmas Child, you want to make sure you have a little bit of budget as the church to fill out any half-filled shoe boxes, or sometimes you'll find a toy inside that was on the do not give list, and someone didn't realize it, so you got to swap it out. You want to make sure you replace it with something. So you do need a little bit of church budget for Operation Christmas Child. But this church is only trying to reach the radius of about 20 miles around. That is the mission and vision of the church, is to impact that town. Operation Christmas Child, while a noble mission, and one of my favorites, to be honest, does not fit in with what this church is trying to do. And so the pastor says, I love that idea, but that's not something that we're going to be able to do, because that is going to take time and resources away from the primary mission of our church, which is that 20-mile radius. We want to serve our local city. And if he's a great pastor, what he'll do and what he'll say is, First Church across the street, they do Operation Christmas Child. If you want to give a box, you can absolutely go drop it off over there, and then you can, participate and send a gift to the child there. But the church as a whole is going to focus on the local stuff. So your idea may not align with the vision, and that's okay. That is okay. The other thing is, you want to make sure that your idea of whatever you're bringing to the table is maybe a solution to a problem that's getting in the way of that vision. So, for example, something that I had to implement when I was the media director at my last church was I wanted to implement Slack. It's a internal messaging system. It's kind of like a forum / chat board / group just for your employees of your work. And at first, I communicated it terribly, and very few people wanted in on this platform. They said, "Why do we need this? This is what email's for. We can just call each other," all that good stuff. So I really had to sit down and was like, okay, well, is this really solving a problem? And so I started talking to our staff, and I said, how long do you spend checking emails? And they said, oh, it's not that long. I said, can you find that email I sent you yesterday? And they'd sit there for about 3 minutes and having to sift through 17, 20 emails a day, more for the main contacts that also get the generic info at church.com. And they would spend 5 minutes just to find one email. Right? And that's a problem, because the more time you spend on that administration stuff, the less time you can spend actually doing ministerial stuff, right? 5 minutes trying to check one email when she has to do that several times a day can get in the way of her getting visitor contacts, visitor thank you letters, communications to other ministries, organization stuff that actually impacts the actual doing of ministry. Anything delaying her on this side, I say this side of, administration, getting in the way of this side of ministry is a problem. So this is kind of where I saw, okay, so our vision at our church is to spread the gospel. And if we're spending so much time on this administration crap because we're all getting too many emails, because we're getting emails from spammers, from organizations we're talking to, and each other, and then members, we need a way to organize this, right? Because we're spending way too much time trying to, on our own internal communication. So I said, this is what Slack will do. Slack will help us with that, because all our internal communications are going to be in Slack. So now, after implementing it a year later, if someone says, did you get my email? We know that if they're a member, it probably came through Fellowship One. If they're outside of our church, it came through email. And if they're on staff, it should be in Slack. And so based on who we're talking to, we could go right into that channel and find that information extremely quickly. And then, of course, Slack has some other benefits as well. This was the main one that I focused on. But, of course, we also had channels for ministries, way for people to connect and easily track documents and workflows and all that stuff. So let me go back. I'm going to keep with my personal Slack example, but let's go back to the Christmas Child. If your idea does not align with the vision of the church, that's okay. And if your pastor says no, it's not always out of discomfort. It's not that your pastor's saying, I'm not comfortable with sending Christmas gifts to people in third world that we'll never see again. That's not a discomfort thing. That's him focusing the time and resources and vision of the church on what it's supposed to do. And if he doesn't see how adding social media to that message, to that vision, if he doesn't see how adding social media will help that mission and vision, then it's not really discomforting for him to say no. It's a distraction. And so you really have to find out, is your idea completely in tune with the pastor's vision for the church? And maybe it's not your pastor's vision. Maybe it's the leadership position. Maybe it's the children's minister vision for the children's ministry, right? You have to make sure it completely 100% aligns with that vision. And if it doesn't, guess what? It's not a fit, and that's okay. Sometimes there are churches for the church. It was explained to me like this when I was an intern. My youth pastor told me, he said, there's two kinds of churches. There's a church for the unchurched, and there's a church for the churched. The church for the unchurched it gets a lot hard to say the longer you say it. The church for the unchurched will do everything they can to reach those unchurched people. The church for the church will do everything they can to keep everything the same because it's just for the same people, right? It's kind of like dating. You do things when you're dating, like go out and have fun and meet new people. But when you're married, you just want to hang out with your spouse. That's okay. Two different styles of doing church. You may disagree with one style. I think a lot of us do disagree with one style. But if it's the mission of the church to raise and bury saints, then that's what it is. Number 2, it is within the vision. If your plan, if what you want to implement, social media, Slack, live streaming, if it is within the vision of the pastor and the church, the next thing you have to ask is it launchable and sustainable? Again, your pastor knows things that you never will. And they've probably seen things happen that started and then stopped and then died, or maybe never quite got off the ground. And what you're pitching sounds a lot like that, right? So to help with this, number 1, I would suggest, or I guess number 2A, suggest that it's not a complete change. And you can read more about this in another Church Training Academy interview we did, how to move forward when your church is stuck in the past, with Michael Lukaszewski. But he talks about how when you're implementing something new, you want to make sure you focus not so much on what's new, but what's staying the same. What is not a complete change? And again, using the social media example, what's not a complete change? Guys, we're still preaching the gospel. The sermon is still happening. The only difference is we're sharing it on social media. We're live streaming it. Where nothing is changing in our church. We're just putting more stuff on the website. Nothing is changing. Show how it improves what's already being done, not what it replaces. Pastor, when I ask you to write one email a week for our congregation, I'm not asking you to sacrifice any sermon time. I'm not asking you to quit Wednesday night prayer service to send this email. It's improving what's already being done. Maybe you preached a sermon on Sunday. On Monday, I would love for you to write an email, maybe about what you thought was missing, right? Because you only have 20, 30, 40 minutes for a sermon. Maybe there was another 10 minutes of content. Could you do a Facebook Live about it? Could you include it in an email? Maybe you can do a Facebook post about it. Show how your change will improve what's already being done. In the social media example, I'm kind of bouncing between examples. I hope you can follow me. Again, we want to share the gospel with as many people as possible. There's more people on Facebook than within 20 miles of our church. We can share more of what's happening at our church and the gospel that we're preaching online and reach more of those people. We're not changing anything. We're not subbing the sermon. We're just spreading it in a new, different way that's going to enhance what we're already doing. Number 2C is you should have a man. I am so into bullet points, and if you're not bullet pointing with me, just ignore my 2A and 2B notes. But also, you need to make sure you have a definitive launch plan and sustainability plan. There's no point in launching something if it's going to end in 2 months. Okay, a blog is a great example. I see this all the time on churches. Pastor says, "I'm going to write a blog," or maybe you convince your pastor. Pastor, can you write blogs? Yeah, sure. I check right now on March 26, 2019. I check a church website, and the last blog was on May the 4th, 2016. That doesn't look good. That started for a few months, and then it died off. So you need to make sure that you have a launch plan and a sustainability plan. How long is it going to take you to get off the ground? How many people do you need to keep it running? And what happens to you if you leave next year? And don't give me that "I'm going to be here forever." Make plans, God laughs. Isn't that how the saying goes? Doesn't matter how long you plan on being here, God can call you somewhere else tomorrow. So you need to make sure you have a plan for what happens next year. Because again, if you're doing a church blog and you leave next year, that blog is gone. Is it even going to be helping anyone? Is it going to be more of a hindrance than a help? So make sure you have a plan on how are you going to launch this? how are you going to keep it going, and how many people do you need, right? It's very easy to say, "No, Pastor, I got it." That's actually a little bit scary, because now the entire reputation of the church on social media is dependent on you. The church doesn't wait for one man. If pastor's sick, church still happens on Sunday. Even if half the staff is sick, even if the staff has gone on retreat, I've never seen a church shut down on Sunday just because a lot of the staff is sick. There are lay people that can come up and run church if they need to, at least in my Baptist faith. So, listen to concerns and be prepared to be flexible. That's number 3. So number 1, make sure everything is in tune with the pastor's vision. Number 2, make sure that it is launchable and sustainable and you can communicate that. And number 3, listen to concerns and prepare to be flexible. Okay? Valentine, you're watching on YouTube. You said you're exactly where you are with this. You have a project and the pastor said no. Number 3, I want you to listen to concerns and be prepared to be flexible. Valentine, if you have any questions, let me know. Be prepared to be flexible. So if you do present something, for example, Pastor, I want you to write a blog. Well, can we, or let me back up. You say, Pastor, I want a blog. I want a weekly blog. Every Monday, I want a new article on our website. Pastor says, I don't think I can do that. How about once a month? You still got your blog. It can still be consistent. It is sustainable. Once a month is certainly more sustainable than once a week. Will you be flexible enough to say, yeah, that's fine? You say, Pastor, I want you to use social media. I want you to help us do live streams on social media. Pastor says, okay, but you got to tell me what to say. And a lot of us would say, nah, Pastor, just go live, say what's on your heart, whatever. No, help your pastor out, okay? This is not a place for you to cop out and think, oh, well, the pastor can do it, therefore I don't have to do as much. I know you're not intentionally being lazy like that, but that's how you come across, okay? You have to work with your people. So prepare to be flexible, and it may require some extra work on your part. Are you prepared for that? Listen to their concerns and be flexible. Going back to my Slack implementation for my church, there were a lot of concerns. Does it have to be on every device? No, it doesn't. It can just be on your computer. It would be nice to have it on every platform that your email is on, because it's there anyways. Will it bug me at the end of the day, like my email? Actually, no. You can set Slack to mute itself on certain hours. So, for example, all of our staff that weren't pastoral, our Slack muted itself at 5 o'clock. After 5 o'clock, we got no messages. We got no Slack notifications. Pastors, I think theirs turned off at 8. So they got no Slack messages, no disturbances. So while emails could still come in and bother them, Slack wasn't. And so that was actually a positive. And unfortunately, we had one guy who said, I am not going to use Slack. I'm an old geezer. This was his words. I'm not going to use it, and you're not going to make me. He was actually going to retire within the year. It was probably closer to 9 or 10 months. So I said, okay, Phil, for you, I'm going to tell everyone if they want to get a hold of you, email you. That was a concession I made. And you know what? I knew it was a temporary thing because he was going to head out in a few months, and I wanted to make sure he had a nice taste in his mouth for what we were trying to do. I think I accidentally said his name, but I wanted to make sure he went out on the way he wanted to, and he wanted to keep everything in email. He had organized his system and his work life that way. So, we all said, yeah, okay, let's let him. Well, that'll be fine. That'll be fine. So everyone knew we were talking to each other on Slack, but we had to email him if anything ever needed to be done. And unfortunately, it did come to that time where, we had a general channel. We would share funny things, and we'd say, oh, yeah, I remember that joke. And the guy would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, oh, you had to be there in Slack. And it became kind of a joke, not at his expense. He laughed, too, because, he put himself on the other side of that wall. But, you got to be prepared to make concessions, prepared to make compromises. And if you're not prepared to do that, guess what? It goes back to, number one, you're not entitled to anything. And if you're not ready to address concerns and be flexible, you're entitled. Okay. And, you don't understand that the pastor has other things that you don't know about, right? Be flexible, be prepared. If you're not prepared with any of these three things, if you're not completely in tune with the vision of the church, if you're not completely sure how to launch and sustain this project, and if you're not prepared to listen to concerns, address concerns, answer them, and be flexible in how you maybe want to implement it, then you're not ready to launch this project. And I'm sorry. But maybe you do. Maybe you still want to launch. You just don't know how to answer all these questions. Let me tell you, if you have an idea, but maybe you need help mapping it. You know it's within the vision, but you aren't sure how to launch it and sustain it. Maybe you are prepared to be flexible, but you want to make sure that you have all objections ready to handle. Okay. You need help with that, and I understand that, and that's kind of why we're here. What's worse is sometimes you have these projects and ideas and you're spinning in circles because you know what needs to happen, you're just unsure how to handle it, how to implement it. How has it been done in other churches before? Maybe you saw it somewhere else, but you're not sure how they did it, and now you're having to face it alone. That's the worst part, when you have this idea and you're like, you might be like Valentine in the YouTube chat, where it's like, I have no idea what to do now that they said no and I've put all this work into my project. I get that. And you're spinning your wheels. Let me tell you guys, this is exactly what CTA Insiders is for. churchtrainingacademy.com/join. You'll find all the information there. Twice a month, this Thursday is our second time meeting of the month. We get together and we each take turns talking about our struggles, our projects, and the things we need to fix. And me, Dave, and the other insiders who have been there, done that, will help you get through it. Someone said a couple weeks ago, someone was using a software called Aperture. It's an Apple product. It's no longer supported. He had no idea what to do. He had all of his photos on Aperture, and now it's not supported. It's going to die soon. What is he supposed to do? Well, Dave had some recommendations. I had some recommendations. I kind of gave him the short-term solution. Dave gave him the long-term solution, and it was specifically tailored to his need. You're not going to go find some YouTube video that says, oh, what to do with your gardening photos once you know that Aperture is gone. No, those are for gardeners, okay? You need something for the church and for your situation, and that's exactly what CTA Insiders Group Coaching is for, and that's part of the CTA Insider membership program. So go to churchtrainingacademy.com/ I'm going to type it out in the chat here, churchtrainingacademy.com/join. Find all the information there. We'd love to have you and be a part of our community. Last part of the Justin Nava Show, I do want to nerd out a little bit. I got two things I'm nerding out about this week. Number one is nerdpastors.com. It's a new blog I am self-promoting here. Me and some friends wanted to launch a blog specifically for pastors and leadership, people in leadership in the church, to nerd out. Okay, we want a place where faith and fandom collide. And so we're talking about TV, movies, comic books, games. There's a fantastic article. Let me actually go there right now, and I'm going to show you here on stream. There is actually an article here. You can see here's the Nerd Pastors. It's very, we just launched it, so it is a little bit sparse. But you can see we have articles on Michael Scott, Star Wars, and this one I'm actually really enjoying. I think a lot of youth pastors are going to get value out of this. MK11, that's Mortal Kombat 11, and student-friendly alternatives. And Mortal Kombat is a new game coming out, and there are a lot of kids talking about it, but it's not a child-friendly game. And so what this guy did was he actually said, so, you know, fighting games are in, people are talking about it, but maybe you want to have an option for your child. So here are the different ways that you can substitute more appropriate games for your children to play. So we got a few games here that are listed. So if you're in a youth group and kids are wanting to play Mortal Kombat, here are some alternatives that are a little bit more family friendly. Like this one's a stupid cartoon where you can still get people together that want to play a game like that. And so it's very sparse, but I'm very excited for it because it's very much a collaboration. I have not written any of these articles, and I'm loving the stuff that we're coming out with. So nerdpastors.com, that is a very, very big thing I'm nerding out about. And of course, the other thing is Major League Baseball, for me, starts tomorrow. Tomorrow, the Astros play the Rays, and I am very excited. Yeah, I'm excited for a new baseball season. I know it's long, and I know baseball's not for everyone, and I get it. But, you know, that's my sport. Yeah. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comments what you thought, what you think, what's going on through your head. Do you have any questions? Leave them down below in the comments wherever you're watching this. Subscribe to the podcast if you're watching this. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and I want to see you succeed. I want to see you succeed and do great things for the Lord, and that's what we're here for, to help you with. So God bless, guys. Have a great day. Have a great week. Now take what you've learned and go change lives.